I still remember the way my mother-in-law, Margaret, looked at me that day, her eyes scanning me from head to toe like I was some sort of embarrassment to her family. She smirked, whispered something to her friend, and laughed. It was my husband Daniel's birthday, and I'd spent hours making his favorite dinner, but none of that mattered to her. All she saw was my cheap dress. "Sophie," she said loud enough for everyone to hear, "you should really try to dress like a married woman from a respectable family. That outfit looks thrifted." Everyone at the table laughed. My cheeks burned. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I was far from poor. In fact, the truth about who I really was would one day make her speechless. But at that moment, I just smiled politely. Because sometimes, silence is the best setup for karma. And trust me, karma was already on its way. When I married Daniel, I thought I'd finally found someone who would love me for who I was, not for money, looks, or status. I came from a modest background, or at least, that's what everyone believed. In reality, after my parents passed, they left me a massive inheritance. But I never flaunted it. I preferred a simple life, one built on love and character, not luxury. Daniel didn't know much about my finances, I didn't see the point in sharing. I wanted him to love me, not my money. But his mother, Margaret, oh, she was something else. She was the kind of woman who judged people by the price tag on their clothes and the size of their house. At family gatherings, she'd compare me to Daniel's ex, Olivia. Olivia always looked so elegant, she'd say, sipping her tea. "You know, Sophie, appearance says a lot about how much you respect yourself." Each comment chipped away at me. One afternoon, when we visited her, she looked at my sandals and sighed. "Those again? You really should invest in something decent. Daniel deserves a wife who looks presentable." I forced a smile, even though inside, I was breaking. I started to wonder, why did I even try so hard to please someone who clearly despised me? Still, I bit my tongue. Because deep down, I knew, the day would come when her judgment would backfire spectacularly. Margaret loved showing off her wealth. Every time we visited, she'd brag about her new designer bag, her exclusive club membership, or how her daughter Melissa was doing so well in her luxury business. And she never missed a chance to make me feel small. When Daniel and I arrived late to a family dinner, she loudly said, "Ah, finally. We thought maybe you had to walk here, Sophie. Public transport must be unpredictable these days." The whole table laughed. Daniel stayed silent. That hurt more than her words. He wasn't cruel, just passive. And Margaret knew it. She used that silence to her advantage. Later that night, I asked him why he never defended me. He sighed, "Sophie, that's just how she is. Don't take it personally." How could I not? She made me feel like an outsider in my own marriage. And the more I stayed quiet, the bolder she became. One evening, during a family barbecue, she humiliated me again. She called everyone's attention and said, "You know, Sophie makes a lovely wife, but I do wonder why she refuses to dress the part. A little glamour never hurt anyone." I froze. Everyone laughed. I excused myself and went inside. In that moment, I promised myself I'd never let her see me break again. Because what she didn't know was that I owned something she couldn't even dream of, a sprawling estate my parents had left me. A hidden mansion just outside the city, surrounded by gardens and a private lake. I'd never shown it to anyone. But soon, I would. A few weeks later, Daniel and I argued. Margaret had been pushing him to marry someone of better standing, and even though he denied it, I could see her poison seeping into him. He said, "Maybe Mom's right. You don't really fit into my family's lifestyle." That broke me. I looked at him, tears filling my eyes. "You think I'm not good enough because I don't wear branded clothes?" He hesitated. "It's not that, it's just, appearances matter." I packed my things and left that night. For the first time in years, I went back to my family's property, my real home. It had been locked for years, but it still stood tall, a white stone mansion with ivy-covered walls, massive windows, and quiet dignity. Standing there, I felt peace again. It reminded me of who I truly was. Not the quiet, humiliated wife trying to fit in, but the strong woman my parents raised. And that's when an idea formed in my mind. Maybe it was time for Margaret to see the real me. A month later, Daniel called, apologizing for everything. He said his mother wanted to make peace and invited me to her birthday celebration. I agreed, but on one condition. We'll celebrate it at my place this year, I said calmly. He hesitated but eventually agreed. When the day came, I greeted them at the gates of my mansion. Their eyes widened immediately. Sophie, whose house is this? Daniel asked, stunned. I still remember the way my mother-in-law, Margaret, looked at me that day, her eyes scanning me from head to toe like I was some sort of. I smiled. Mine. Margaret blinked, completely thrown off. Yours? But you said you grew up in a small home. I never said small, I corrected softly. Just private. As they entered, I watched their eyes dart around the grand staircase, crystal chandeliers, and the view of the lake outside. Margaret's face turned pale. She didn't know what to say. I walked her through the gallery filled with family portraits and said, this was my parents' home. I inherited it when they passed. For the first time, she was speechless. We sat down for dinner in the glass room overlooking the gardens. Margaret tried to act composed, but I could see her discomfort. I had no idea you came from such means, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I smiled politely. You never asked. You were too busy judging my sandals. She shifted uncomfortably. Daniel stared at me in disbelief. I don't understand why you never told me, he said. Because, I replied, I wanted to know if you loved me for who I am, not for what I have. He lowered his gaze. Margaret tried to regain control. Well, I suppose everyone keeps some secrets. I looked her straight in the eye. The difference is, my secret doesn't hurt anyone. Yours did. Silence fell over the table. I continued, you made me feel small for not flaunting wealth. But I don't need to wear luxury to know my worth. Her lips trembled. For once, she had no witty remark. I could almost see the shame in her eyes, a mix of regret and realization. Margaret, I said softly, money can buy clothes, but it can't buy class. The words hung heavy in the air. That night, when they left, Daniel hugged me and whispered, I'm sorry. I was blind. I nodded but didn't respond. Some lessons needed to be learned the hard way. A few weeks passed. Margaret stopped making comments about appearances. When I met her again at a charity event, she approached me gently. Sophie, she said, I've been meaning to apologize. I was wrong about you. I smiled. It's not about being wrong, it's about seeing people for who they truly are. She nodded, eyes glossy. I hope we can start over. Maybe it was genuine, maybe it wasn't, but either way, I had peace. Daniel and I worked through our issues. He began to appreciate the strength he had overlooked in me. Sometimes, people only learn respect after being humbled. And that's exactly what happened. Looking back, I realized something. It's not about revenge through wealth, it's about dignity. Margaret taught me one painful but powerful lesson. People who judge others by appearances often reveal their own insecurities first. And while I could have flaunted my mansion, I chose to use it as a mirror. So she could finally see herself clearly. Would you have done the same if you were in my place? Because sometimes, the sweetest revenge is simply letting the truth shine louder than pride.